everyone. It's Maria Turner, the Executive Director with the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund, coming to you again for this episode 2 of Project Table Talk. This is a series that we hope to bring to you the second and fourth Thursdays of every month, and we plan to feature women leaders who have things to tell you about the great occurrences that are going on throughout Fond du Lac County. Project Table Talk actually began in 2018 as part of our Fond du Lac Says No More initiative. And we put teal tables in about 50 different locations across Fond du Lac County to educate specifically on the issues of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse and neglect. So fast forward to today, right? COVID struck last year. Everyone had to reimagine how we delivered education and engagement within the community. So this year in January, we decided that we would bring Project Table Talk to all of you virtually. So that's what we're doing here. We plan to educate not only on the topics of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse and neglect, but also other topics that are really important in our community. And that's what we're going to be doing here today. I'm joined this week by Erin Flood, who is a member of our board of directors and also chair of our community education and communications committees, and Kyle Jefferson, who is also a brand new member of our board of directors and part of that same committee. So the three of us will probably be coming to you from here on out to add some varying perspectives. Each time we're going to publicize on YouTube, and hopefully as we go along, we'll include some other social media outlets in that. That's where we're at to catch you up and bring you up to speed on Project Table Talk and how it came to be. So today we're joined by Daisy Frazier of Ebony Vision and Tracy Obler of United for Diversity to discuss their joint community education effort, the Humanity Project of Fond du Lac, telling the untold story. This is specifically connected for us, why we're bringing it to you this month as part of Black History Month. You can see Daisy's got the nice background to remind us why we are here today. And so let me just introduce you a bit to Daisy and Tracy. So Daisy Frazier is originally from the south side of Chicago, but has been here in the Fond du Lac community for 40 years. She is employed by SSM Health, Agnesian HealthCare. She is president of Ebony Vision, a nonprofit local community organization, the mission of which is to impact and improve the Fond du Lac community and surrounding areas through unified efforts that educate and enhance the African American culture. Their vision: they are dedicated to networking and developing partnerships within the community that secure the legacy as an organization standing for equality and promoting positive effects through community outreach. Okay, so we're helping fulfill your mission today as well.
That's right,
Daisy.
That's right.
And Tracy has lived in the Fond du Lac area all her life. She and her husband, Mike, have 6, did you hear that? 6 daughters and 4 grandchildren, only one of whom is a boy. So raising happy, confident, caring girls into women is their life's work. I'll say, I got 2 girls and oh my gosh, I can't imagine tripling that. Tracy is a substitute teacher for the Fond du Lac School District and will be making her first commitment as a CSA associate this spring, is co-founder of the Humanity Project, telling the untold story, a member of YMCA's Diversity and Inclusion Global Committee, and serves as president of United for Diversity, a local nonprofit whose mission is to celebrate, educate, and advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our Fond du Lac community. She's an active community volunteer, as is Daisy, and you can read more. They've got a longer bio that we'll post with this video to learn a little bit more about both of them. But with that, I'm going to welcome the 2 of you, and we will get started with our conversation here today. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Daisy, let's start with you, if we could. And maybe you could give our viewers just a little bit of an overview and a history of the Humanity Project and how it came to be here in Fond du Lac.
Okay. Um, our dear friend, Judy Goldsmith, back in 2015, reached out to certain leaders in our community. It was after the death of Freddie Gray in Baltimore, Maryland. He was in police custody. And on the ride to the police station, they put him handcuffed in the paddy wagon. I don't know if they still call it a paddy wagon. And by the time they got to the department, he could not walk. And so he sustained injuries on the ride to the police department and died 2 days later. Judy reached out to us and she just felt compelled. A lot of times we talk about things, but we forget to move. Judy was so consumed with grief on yet another death of African American, especially male, in the custody of police officer. And also, let me just say, these are some of the stories. They are good stories, just like there are bad stories. And so she reached out to Tracy and I, among with another 5 individuals, and we started the Humanity Project, telling the untold story, which is the history of racism in our nation. It's not taught in school. A lot of people don't know. And so that ran from 2015 to 2018. I got to the point we were just, singing to the choir. This past summer, May 25th, George Floyd, the horrific murder of George Floyd. Now, in between these 2 Black men, there were several stories like this. Again, the Humanity Project was thought of. Tracy and I had a discussion. We are busy people. We weren't looking for anything extra to do. Again, compelled to do something. Every time I tell this story, I think of one of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's, one of his many quotes. Everybody can be great because everybody can serve. Because we ask the question many times, what can I do? I can't do anything. I'm just one person. You can do anything. So Tracy and I had this discussion, and we're like, because many people had a front row seat to George Floyd's murder that normally would have not seen anything like this. But we in the Black and brown community, it's nothing new to us. So after that horrific murder, people started reaching out to us. What can we do? What can we do? And so I said, Tracy, we discussed it and we thought, if we don't move and revive the Humanity Project, I think we will forever regret this. So we started planning. We say many times, this is small fries in our little small community. It takes a lot of manpower to put this together. No sooner than we get out of that current month session, we're planning for the next. And so it's an 8-month program. And guys, we're doing this through a pandemic, virtually. So when we first adapted this, it was normally 2 hours. We would have a half an hour social hour with some food. We could show a 50-minute video. We're like, everybody's zooming. We have to condense this to an hour. And we've been faithful to that.
Yeah.
Only going over maybe by 5 minutes. And so we could not have done it without the planning committee. We have been overwhelmed. We have 2 sessions, first Tuesday of the month, noon and 6:30 p.m. We wanted to make it accessible for whoever wanted to be a part of it. I think we had, what, Tracy, like 170 people sign up through various reasons. Not all could attend. So each session, we have anywhere from 52 to 65 in attendance. So wonderful, wonderful. We've had people be emotional from just a full spectrum of being sad, feeling guilty, being angry. But we say it's not about pointing who didn't do what. It's about doing the best we can for the next generation. It's about making you aware. I get excited about this. Tracy, you continue.
Yeah, just a few things come to mind, Daisy, listening to you talk. And one is just how so many times we get caught up in conversation and words and not action. I mean, that's so.
Yeah, it's, well, you know, sometimes they say, or all the time they say, starting is the hardest part, you know, because sometimes I think we're just conditioned. We talk about stuff forever. We want to know how to plan it and do this. But when Tracy and I sat down and talked, the planning started right away. We built it for this edition two. And so we've just been blessed. We've just been blessed to have our community to come into this call of action with us.
Yeah, I love that. And what the other thing I was thinking of too is that as an educator, I think about my own experiences in the classroom and experiences, you know, working with teachers who are teaching our history, and who don't know what they don't know. You know, so much of what we do in the classroom is tied to standards. And when you talk about the systemic issues that we have to tackle, really the education is a huge part of that systemic issue. And so, Tracy, I know that you're, you know, in the classroom and working with youth. How important do you think it is for us to make sure that our teachers are equipped with the whole story?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Erin. And thank you, Maria and the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund, for inviting me and my sister Daisy to today's table talk, by the way. Yeah, I've been a substitute teacher in the Fond du Lac School District just since last August. But I've been in a lot of classrooms, grades K through 12, and it's really given me even a greater and new perspective on the challenges that our kiddos face in school. And because of the work I do with United for Diversity, and most notably now with the Humanity Project, I am super sensitive to the climate that our students of color especially are learning in. And whereas there's always, where there's always work to do, I'm seeing a lot of positive things happen in our public schools, and that really excites me. And I'm encouraged by the ongoing work that our district is doing with the staff and administrators right now, with some inclusivity training. And I'm very happy to see that many of these same people are in the Humanity Project. They're there every month too, and they're doing this work with us. One thing that has really stuck out with me since my new role with the district is being in schools and seeing classroom libraries that have books featuring Black and brown authors, or stories about children with different skin tones and hairstyles, and, you know, just historical books about Native Americans and African Americans and Asian Americans, and, you know, the trailblazers that they've been. And, you know, just as important as it is for a little girl to go to the toy store and pick out a doll that has the same skin color as her, it's as important for these same girls to go to school and find books that reflect their culture and racial identity. And however, where I really think the change needs to happen is that we make these norms in our schools and societies, and not an extraordinary or a special circumstance. What I mean by that, all children, boys and girls, should also be reading and appreciating these diverse stories, and not just one day in January or during the month of February, but every day. All of our students benefit from experiencing these stories, and frankly, we're providing a disservice if we're not educating them in this way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And even we all have a role in this. Even those of us who are here as parents, grandparents, favorite aunties and uncles, we can be doing this work of wearing and having an inclusive lens in the other things that we do every day, buying our kiddos diverse toys for birthdays and holidays, and considering the movies that we watch with them, things like that. I got a little off, but back to your question, Erin. Yeah, it's incredibly important for educators to understand the full scope of history, specifically the history of racism. The untold ugly parts of history have not been taught, and there's reasons these stories have been omitted from our books, yet they explain so much about our current realities, specifically the inequities that our students of color face because of bad and broken systems. So, for example, to know the history of housing discrimination and redlining might help a teacher better understand why they have students that so often move in and out of their classrooms, out of the district, out of the city or state. And sometimes this happens to kids multiple times a year. It might also help encourage school administrators to consider working with city and council, city and county officials, and lawmakers to better address the socioeconomic challenges that our families face, and provide resources that would allow them to stay in their homes and not have to be uprooted and change their, disrupt their children's education and social lives and routine and even their mental health. All of these disruptors are putting our kids behind. But to understand the full scope, the deeper questions we should all be asking ourselves are, why has it been difficult for families of color to build wealth? Why are so many fathers in prison? Why are there disparities in our education and criminal justice system? And too often these questions are, not being asked, but they're not even being considered because people don't really pay attention to things that don't personally affect them. And so, as the saying goes, you don't know what you don't know. I think someone said that earlier. But understanding how race plays into all of these systems and how it's all interconnected should just make us all pause. And I'll just end by saying, when we know better, we do better.
Definitely. Thank you for that perspective, Tracy. Just kind of piggyback, even me as a Black man, I don't speak for everyone, but from my experience, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, right? So I grew up in the inner city. I went to a public school there. And when I think about, my upbringing, it was all about like history. It was all about, we're teaching, math, science, reading, writing, but they're also teaching us history, teaching us about things that we did know when we were growing up, stuff that is important, just not for the month of February or a day here, a day there, but they're teaching you about what happened to Malcolm X. They're teaching you about things that happened with Martin Luther King and some of those stories, and you go on from there, which kind of shaped me to where I am, because when I came here, and I've been in the Wisconsin area since I went to college, which is 2007, like you started to see the decline in that. You didn't see it in the school districts. I'm heavily in the schools, especially growing up and different things. You want to know, like, what are they teaching? Like, they're not teaching that anymore. They just leave it on the back burner, and they may post posters on the wall instead of really just diving into it and making people understand, like, this is our history. This is what we need to know. Like, everyone has their own struggles, right? As a Black man, I have my own struggles, things that I go through that other people don't go through, right? There's a lot of different things that are not being said or just been hidden. I remember a point, piggyback on Daisy when we were planning the session and thinking about that. When I'm talking to Erin, I'm talking to Maria, right? I actually really today now I don't really like Black History Month. Why don't I like Black History Month? Because why are we taking 28, 29 days to talk about history of African Americans and talk about this? We didn't do the things that happened in our culture, and didn't happen in a month. It happened throughout years. It happened throughout generations. It just didn't happen one day. And that's the part that's just me. That's my personal opinion. I feel as though we should do a better job, all of us, of making it more relevant in the school districts, in the community, and everywhere, anywhere you go. And it's even my fault, right? I think I've done a bad job of not being more vocal about it, speaking up. And that was just me being ashamed, and I shouldn't have been ashamed of my history. So you grow from that and you get better, and you want to continue to learn from that. So Black History Month, I don't like it as much as I used to. I still I still want to learn about my history, but I do it in other ways. I don't do it just in 1 month. One thing is, like, I have a 2-year-old son, and every day we read him books. We read him Black books. We read him, fairy tale books, but we read him everything so he can see everything. I don't want him to be one dimensional. I want him to be open-minded. I want him to see everything and learn everything, because this will be his history. He will have to learn about his history. And just like teachers teach about history and they teach about math, science, and all that stuff that's important, history is important too, because you need to know the background of where you came from and how we got to where we are today. That's a very important fact. So like, with that being said, you think about racial equality, otherwise work has been planned year round. What is your perspective? Like, Daisy or Tracy, what are your perspectives? You guys work in the Fond du Lac area, you do work year round. Like, what are some of the thoughts and some of the things that you guys are looking to get done?
Well, Cal, I agree with you. And again, this is just our opinion. As McDonald says, Black history is American history, 365 days of the year.
Yes.
Cal, here's
Yes.
where I go a little farther. So in an ideal world, yes, it will be taught in the schools for all students, but it's not. So here's what we have. The shortest month of 12, which pick, especially because of two people, Abraham Lincoln and I think it was Carter G. Woodson. No, Frederick Douglass, because it's their birthday month. But so we have no celebration versus celebration for the month of February. I'll take that. One of the reasons why our youth are not connected to the history of African Americans is because it's not out there. So versus not celebrating at all to identifying it in 1 month, I'll take it. One of the things Ebony Vision started doing, I think like 3 years ago, at our monthly meetings, we, at some point in that meeting, normally at the end of the meeting, we have the African American Showcase, because we want to make people aware. There are thousands of people in the African American culture who have given a lot to this world. Some of them gave their life, and we want people to know that. Media will just take the negative of some cultures and just exploit it. That's all you see. There's much more dimension to African Americans. So we want you to know about it. So if at every monthly meeting, we showcase somebody, and normally someone you may not have heard of, whether it's in our past or currently today. And we need to help our youth, all youth, know the greatness, know the richness of different cultures. Now, I sometimes say, well, if everybody in your inner circle or outer circle look like you, you're missing out. You're missing out on culture, on cultivating relationships, because Ebony Vision feels it is all about relationship. And so, the youth, they're looking at everything we do. Let's give them something positive and tools to use to carry forth. That's one of the reasons why we have our mentoring groups. Men of Vision is our mentoring group. Our target market is African American youth, but it's open to everyone. It is open to everyone. And I get excited about Black history because it is at least, this. And a lot of people, yes, they get involved for that 1 month, but we try to make people aware and to continue it the other 11 months.
So they just to piggyback on one thing that you said, is like your surroundings, your inner circle. Like growing up, my inner circle was just my same color of my skin, right? I didn't know how me getting out and branching out in college and being able to have friends of different nationalities helped me to grow and mold me to be better and learn more. And you're absolutely right. We do need to do that more, right? Having others around you definitely makes it better. Gives you an understanding of someone else that you don't know. How do we grow together if we're only around the people that we know?
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So like we had a script and like there's so much going on. We've gotten a ton of rich conversation already here. Like I'm like going, oh my God, I can say a little something about this, a little something about that. So thank you so far for, the level of honesty and learning, just having this conversation. Every time I sit down and I have these conversations, I learn something, right? And so, one of the things that I've observed, not just since George Floyd, but for years, right? Because I've had the opportunity to be in places, in spaces where bridging gaps between people of different backgrounds has been important, right? So in journalism, I started my career in newspaper business. That was important there. It was important for newsrooms to understand how can we tell these stories. And then as I've gotten into nonprofits, obviously just boom, like that nonprofits I feel are just dedicated to doing better with having these conversations. But one thing I have noticed is that, for white people, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, right? But as my observations, a lot of times there's discomfort surrounding having these conversations because there's shame, there's guilt, there's like, oh my gosh, am I going to be attacked for something that I didn't personally do, but my ancestors did, and I feel horrible about that. Or am I going to say something that makes me look uneducated or like I don't know the issue as well as I should, right? And for me, I've just kind of been like, whatever, if I were sitting in the space of traditionally marginalized people, if I were one, I would be going like, oh, you feel uncomfortable? Oh, darn, like too darn bad, like get over here and learn with us, right? And so that's why I've personally pushed myself outside of, any sort of discomfort or, whatever, and tried to educate myself more. And like, even like every time I'm part of your Humanity Project, I sit there and we do these breakout groups and I'm still learning. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I wish people would understand that you got to start somewhere and you got to realize that it's going to be a forever process, right? Because all of us are constantly changing and evolving. And what I love is our kids are already light years ahead of our generation, right? And it's like, oh, thank God, certainly there's still work to be done, but I can see it already. And that just gives me like so much hope. So what I want to bring forward with this whole kind of rambling off conversation here that I just had with myself is, what do you say, Tracy, to people that have this discomfort in stepping into the space of having conversations and learning? Certainly the Humanity Project, getting involved in that is one way to educate ourselves, but what are some other ways that maybe aren't as formal that you've noticed, or maybe United for Diversity or Ebony Vision has provided to people here in Fond du Lac, that someone that is maybe a little bit reticent to go forward, what could they be doing to just start their learning process and move into that space?
Sure. Well, one thing I want to start by saying is that Daisy is like the yin to my yang, you know. There's things that we can do better together when we're together. I mean, there's messages that are received better when I say them, and there's messages that are received better when Daisy says them for whatever reason. So you have to, you know, just kind of recognize that. You also have to set ground rules, I think, are important. Like as far as the Humanity Project, we defined early in our project that what our project is about, but also what it is not. And it is not in no way intended to make anyone feel blame or shame for not knowing this history, or, you know, anything that's happened that we haven't had any control about. So we're real intentional about having courageous conversations and helping people understand what that's about, realizing that people are entering these meetings or these trainings at way different levels of knowledge and personal experiences. So I personally am very comfortable to say, to acknowledge that I have white privilege. But that hasn't always been the case, you know, because I haven't known I've had white privilege. I also know that I'm not going to go talk to a person or a group of people and all of a sudden lay white privilege on them if they've had no training at all in diversity, equity, or inclusion. So we really have to meet people where they're at. Observations are that, you know, when we're meeting people where they're at, then we can walk together, right? So without pointing at fingers at anyone, I can speak my truth as a white female, okay? This is my truth, and that's important. Let people speak their truth. And too often, people speak their truth and then people doubt it, or they say, well, that didn't really happen, or what if, or whatever. So let people speak their truth and believe it. So, you know, I can say that I have white privilege because I know that because of the color of my skin, there are simply things I don't have to worry about. You know, I can go to almost any hairstylist in town and get my hair done. I can buy Band-Aids at the store that match my skin tone. I can drive around. Right now I have a broken headlight, and I was a little nervous about that, but I know that I'm not going to get pulled over and perhaps pulled out of my car, or, you know, have it searched just on mere suspicion or bias. I'm not followed around in stores. But most importantly, as a mother, I don't have to worry every day when my kid leaves our house that someone is going to find her threatening, misunderstood, or that she's going to get killed or shot for no just reason. And so these are just things that not everyone thinks about. So, you know, we're not responsible for the history. You know, the Europeans came and they took over land from our indigenous people, and, you know, brought over African slaves. You know, we can't control that. That's history. But what we are responsible for is knowing that history, identifying what went wrong, and then create, like Daisy said, the history we want for the next generation. So just kind of sum up what I've learned in our community is that there are so many really, really wonderful things happening. And I don't think enough people know about that or give us credit, you know, for it. Unite for Diversity has been in this community for over 20 years. And we are alive and well because of relationships. And Daisy said this too. It's building relationships. We find people and other organizations who have the same care and commitment to creating a welcoming, safe, inclusive community for everyone that lives here, visits here, and works here. And, you know, I can just name off all kinds of partners. You know, the police department has been a huge partner with us, the school district, the library, the YMCA, you know, religious communities, and obviously organizations like Ebony Vision and the Women's Fund. But I'm going to just sum this up and say that I believe it's just all about thinking outside of ourselves, building relationships, and giving opportunities for others to tell their story and share their experiences.
And I echo that, everything that Tracy have said. Allies to speak up, relationship. And when you see cultural events in our community, support it in some way, And so, but I would just like to gently offer this also. It's not about pointing fingers. It's not talking about what you haven't been done. We're so far removed from that because we got to catch up. We're behind time. We need to get straight to the point to fixing this. Okay, we've wasted too much time. And I just like to gently say to people, just make yourself aware of the history of racism in our nation. Just make yourself aware, because we believe once you know the history, when you look at today's time, what we're going through, it's all by design. If you learn the history of why years ago, I feel that slavery has never been dealt with. There's residue left from that. You can't go forward in something if you haven't dealt with the past, because it's going to come out in every situation. And you just have to be honest. And you know what? I pray for courage every day, because when I speak, it's not to hurt, insult, point finger at. It's just to move forward in knowing this is the right thing to do. Just do the right thing. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you both for your perspectives. I appreciate it. And just when I was sitting listening to Tracy talk, one of the things that I was thinking about, just not only from what she said, but my own thoughts about a lot of the work and just like awarenesses, especially in the last year of my life, that I think I've had to deal with. But Daisy, you said the word allyship. And I think examining what it really means to be an ally is what you're talking about. And when you say gently, I want to gently suggest, or I love the way you phrase that, because a relationship is hard to have when everything feels hostile, right? So
yes, you run from it. You run from it.
Yeah. And there's enough to run from already.
Yeah.
So I just love that, the gentle invitation to awareness, because once you're aware, it's really hard to continue to behave in certain ways, because you're going to have to live with what you're now aware of. Right. So I commend you for the way you just invite everybody to take part in examining what allyship can be.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so we knew that we could probably talk for hours on this topic. So our 30 minutes, we're probably a little over. We're not quite as good as you guys with the Humanity Project staying on task here. But let me just wrap a few things up. So one is, I want to point out that the reason that we wanted to do this with you is not only because this is the topic of the day, right? So many people are discussing this, but it's important to discuss, because when we talk about our initiative with Fond du Lac Says No More, racism is power-based violence, right? It is some of the most devastating, emotional, physical, sexual violence that has occurred in the history of our country. And so if we're going to talk about Fond du Lac saying no more through our initiative at the Women's Fund, we need to talk about this topic. And so that's why I wanted to have you as guests here today, because I think it's important. In terms of Fond du Lac Says No More, that initiative, you can learn more about what we're doing. We have a lot of work to continue forward with, but we have social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and now YouTube. There's our website, FDLsaysnomore.com. So go ahead and take a look at some of the things we're doing with that. I also want to, give a shout out to the organizations that have been part of that, the Fond du Lac Police Department, ASTOP, Solution Center, Agnesian SSM Health, fundamental to the work that we're doing to try to educate and try to bring awareness to these issues of power-based violence. So if you have an interest in discussing a topic with us, email me, fdlwomensfund@gmail.com. Love to have some conversation with people who have ideas on what we should bring to the table to discuss. We will see you all here in 2 weeks. Thank you, Tracy and Daisy, for coming with your heart. The two of you women, the amount of leadership you have shown in this Fond du Lac community, not just around this topic, but you're beautiful women and you're beautiful leaders. And that's what we're here to raise up at the Women's Fund. So thank you for joining us and allowing this conversation to take part. And I hope people learn from it. The next one on February 25th, we'll welcome 2 other women, Haley Lowney with Solution Center and Rihanna Zuliger with ASTOP to talk about teen dating violence. So we hope you join us then. And thank you all for your perspectives here today.
Thank you, Maria, for the opportunity. Can I do a shout out to our Black History virtual event that's coming up on this Monday, February 15th at 6:30 p.m. Inbox me, Daisy Frazier, for the link. Thank you. Thank you,
I'm
Erin.
coming.
Thank you, Cal. All right. Thank you so much.